Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, this is Renegade Operative here, and I wanted to make a video talking about all of my thoughts on Resident Evil 7's direction, talking about some key points as to where Capcom will go, talking about some future projects involved, and my overall opinions on those. So let's jump into the mix and talk about the first topic, which is Resident Evil 7's direction. So let's get into the first topic, and we're talking about Resident Evil 7's direction. What I think of the direction and where they should go. Now, I think that the method that they're taking this in is not bad at all. I think that they were listening to the fans, because don't believe in that bull crap that Capcom was saying about how if they listen to the fans all the time that they don't wind up pleasing anyone. I think this is definitely for you guys. They're scaling it back. They're taking it back to survival horror. They're taking it back to a singular location. They're taking most of the characters out that are already established in the series that know how to deal with these zombie encounters. So that is a good thing. This is all the stuff that we've been asking for years. This is definitely a game tailored to all the people who wanted the horror back into the Resident Evil series. But I think the way they go about it, it could end up as a disaster if it's bad. And the reason I say this is because they're already going in this new era, this new third era of first person view mode, where the camera used to be fixed camera angles in Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, and then they moved on to over the shoulder, and now they're going into first person view. If this game flops, however, it'll be another identity crisis. It'll be a game that a lot of people will think is mirroring Outlast or PT, and people already think that. Now, it's not uncommon that they went in this direction, because we have games like Outlast, we have games like Amnesia, we have games like Condemned that already sort of tried to do the survival horror first person aspect, and they did it well before Resident Evil 7's development. Resident Evil 7 started development in 2014. Games like Outlast were already out a year before. So I think that Capcom definitely are borrowing some inspiration from other successful games for this, and they're trying to spin it into their own sort of thing with Resident Evil and making it canon into the mainline. How I feel about that is going to be in the next topic, and that is the story integration of the characters and what they will do, as this is a mainline title in the RE franchise. For the story integration and the characters, I really don't know how I feel about them totally taking out all the characters and leaving them as these sort of Easter eggs or side references. I think that characters like Chris, Leon, Jake, Sherry, Claire, they are all memorable. People will remember them over the average Joes that they introduce in the series. Now, I know they have to introduce new characters to keep it fresh, but maybe sort of keep them, up to speed with the story. Maybe there's another outbreak going on somewhere that Chris is handling or Leon is handling, and it'll get us excited for the future Resident Evil games where we might see these characters again in action. I think that though, if they decide to do this, if they decide to show off what the characters are doing, then there might be a chance for us to be roped in the outbreak, and then people might be questioning the style, saying that, well, Resident Evil 7 took it back to survival horror, but now we're in this sort of action-y hellhole. They don't have to do that. I think that they can ramp up the pace, and they can still make it so that these characters are integrated, stuff is continuing, and it doesn't feel like a sideline game than a game in the mainline series. So I don't want it to feel like it's a spinoff. I want it to feel like it's a true sequel to Resident Evil 6 and all the stuff is going on. And I think when people get more into the lore, that's where it's going to get really satisfying, even with the new characters blending in with the old. Something we see that's dynamic that we really don't see that much often in video game franchises. Them injecting some new life into the series while keeping the old lore fresh and updated for you guys to really get on those plot threads and those things that's going on, like the plot twist and stuff like that. So I think that's interesting. Also, I think it helps that if this new trilogy of Resident Evil games is successful with the third era, like Resident Evil 7 through Resident Evil 9, then now's the time to start thinking about a proper epilogue to these characters. Give them a proper send-off, because you don't want to just have them just in Resident Evil 6, which was the lowest point of the series to some people. That's what I think. So now we move on to the next point. How will Resident Evil 2 Remake be affected by Resident Evil 7? To be perfectly honest, I don't think it's going to be affected at all. I think that they probably are going, if they were smart, let's just keep this in mind. If they were smart, they would keep it in the vein of Resident Evil Remake 1. Just amplify it for the modern audiences. I think that's what they should go for. They should take all the improvements of that game, all the stuff they worked on, try to find out what works the best, and enhance it. So they need to keep it in the tradition of fixed camera if they're going to do that. Or who knows, maybe this will be over the shoulder, but again, if they do over the shoulder for Resident Evil 2 Remake, I think that it'd make the game a lot more easier because you can just headshot any zombie that comes around the corner and they'll be less of a threat. So you have to sort of tell yourself they aren't going to really change this formula. It's just true. I mean, if you have the third person over the shoulder camera for certain games like Dead Space, it works in that regard because the enemies react to you totally different if you shoot them in the head. If you shoot their head off, then they'll just come after you with their body and you can totally eviscerate the necromorphs and they can still keep coming after you. You have to make sure they're totally dead in order for that to work. So I don't see that happening in Resident Evil 2 Remake because, like I said, shooting the zombies in the head with a camera like that, it's easy game. For the camera angle, I don't think they're going to change that either because it's in first person view for Resident Evil 7. I don't think they're going to change that for Remake 2 because, again, I think the guns are to Capcom's back at this point, and fans really want to see that project successful. So I think that if they mess that up, people are going to be pulling the trigger on them ASAP. So I don't see them changing that anytime soon. I don't think that Resident Evil 7's development will have anything to do with Resident Evil 2 Remake. If anything, I guess maybe they'll port over some team members because there's a lot of members that might be working on Resident Evil 7 that worked on Resident Evil 2 before. I could see some exchanging of the assets, some exchanging of ideas, but that's about it. Generally, I think that Resident Evil 2 Remake will remain unaffected. So we have the final bullet point here, and that is, overall, is first-person horror a perfect means to go back to survival horror? I don't think that it doesn't matter any camera angle they use as long as it's scary. I think anything has the capability to be scary, whether it's fixed camera, whether it's first person, whether it's third person. There have been games in that medium that has shown time and time again that you can make scary material with what you have, even if it's a high budget, even if it's a low budget, even if it's an indie game, if it's a AAA game. You can make some pretty stellar moments with whatever you have at hand. And I think that's what Capcom needs to notice, is that if they're catering to a specific demographic, they really need to look at the vision and see what they have to offer with Resident Evil thematically. And people want that horror craze to come back thematically. They want that to be seeped in the game, and hopefully they stay true to adhering to this, to putting this in the game, to making it really scary with the whole, new features with VR and everything else they're implementing. So I think thematically Resident Evil needed this. They needed to go back to the horror because you had moments in Resident Evil 5 through 6 where Chris was punching a boulder. You had Jake Mueller punching giant Ustanox in the face. So it was all ridiculous. It was all in good fun, but it's something that you naturally don't think of as Resident Evil when it comes to how the series started. So I think they did need it to scale back the vision, and they did need it to go back to that thematically, and they do have the capability of making this into a totally sick and wicked game that makes you shit your pants, like Hideo Kojima was mentioning with PT. So I don't know. It all depends. I would say I'm a little bit indifferent to Capcom's word because they can mess it up. Don't get me wrong, Capcom has messed up games in the past a lot more than not, considering that we're not in the golden age of Capcom games anymore. This isn't the 90s, this isn't the late 2000s where Capcom could shit out gold and offer it to you on a plate, and they could just give you a good game in the process. It doesn't matter what it is, it doesn't matter if you really don't like it, it can still be a good game. But we're not in that age anymore where Capcom is known for quality. They're known for shady business tactics, and they're known for making their IPs irrelevant. So it remains to be seen for Resident Evil in terms of what I personally think about it, and I'm going to close up here and say that I hope that the game is nice. I haven't played the demo. It's not representative of the final game, so I'm going to give it a fair shot and be open-minded. But in terms of just jumping the bandwagon and saying this is the best thing ever, I'll wait on that front, because like I said, Capcom is not in the golden age anymore. So let's just hold on, calm our titties, and let's see what happens with Resident Evil. But this is Renegade Operative signing off. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this sort of discussion video that was off the cuff, that wasn't planned, that wasn't rehearsed. It was just my thoughts and my overall opinions on what I thought about RE7's direction, some bullet points addressed, and trying to get to the bottom of things while giving my opinion on everything else. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this style of video. I normally don't do it often, but I decided, well, fuck it, I might as well, because I want to just get this off my chest right away and see what happens. So hopefully you guys liked it, and hopefully your day is magnificent. Peace out.